Hey y'all, it's your girl, your legal bestie, attorney Simone, and this is another episode of Girl, Is That Legal? Listen, I have been live in the courtroom. Let me pull this down. Sorry about that. I have been live in the courtroom, guys. Ooh, my hair is doing whatever it wants. For the last week on the Diddy trial. Let me know where you're watching as you come on in. Oh yeah, as someone is saying, okay, I'm looking at your comments. Someone's saying, please link up with Tisa. I've seen her in line each day. So yes, guys. But I have been enjoying giving you guys the real deal from the courtroom. So you guys have been loving it. I appreciate it. Please feel free to hit that Cash App right here, which is Miss Redwine, or I'm very grateful for super chats, etc. But I decided I'm going to stay for a few more days if you guys want me to. So let me know. Drop your questions down below. I want to know what questions that you have and would like for me to get answered while I am still here. I'm trying to decide how long I'm going to stay in trial. But this week, I wanted to do a quick recap. I know you guys are accustomed, these bloggers, YouTubers, we like having these long videos so we can put ads in there so we can get compensated. But I'm working on trying to do some 30-minute or less videos that give you the highlights. They give you the key points. All right. So we're going to do a quick recap of this week's, if you count the first week, which was jury selection, and then the next week would be considered week 2. So technically, this would be considered week 3, hypothetically. So I call it week 2 because it's actually week 2 of testimony. What the hell? Here you go, week 2 of testimony. So this week began with, and I'm looking down at my notes for those of you like, what are you looking at? Someone says, stay until the prosecution rests. I think I want to. The state only has 2 weeks left. That's right. So the state is actually saying that they are going to wrap up early. They are thinking they don't need an additional week. They are going to cut some of their witnesses. And let me explain why that might happen. It could be that those witnesses are going to be duplicative. They're going to say the same things that other people have said. Now, the jury is already getting bored with a lot of this, so that might be good if the new witnesses on that list aren't going to be shedding light on new and additional facts that could lead to a charge. Let's not bore the jury. In addition, it could be that those additional witnesses, they may have issues in their background. They may have issues on cross-examination where it's better to use someone else, for example. So that is likely why. But the defense has said, hey, even if the prosecution ends early, they're saying defense is saying they might actually need more time based on what they've been hearing. So it looks like it could be the same amount of total time, which would be the 8 weeks, but perhaps only 5 weeks for the prosecution and then 3 for the defense. Those short ones are good too. Parts 1. Oh, you guys, yeah, parts 1, 2, and 3 of the short videos. All right, I'm seeing some questions in here that I'm going to star, like asking me my thoughts about Mia. Hit that like, hit that subscribe as you come in. Oh, first, I also want to tell you guys, thank you so much for helping me reach my goal. When at the beginning of this month, when I started covering this trial, my goal was 55,000 subscribers. You guys helped me not only get there, but you helped me get to 60,000. So let's see if we can get to 70 in the month of June. Thank you so much. Hit that like, subscribe. Feel free to share this with your friends or family on Facebook and Twitter as well. Have the children of the defendants still been coming to court? Yeah, the boys are there almost every day. I'm going to get to that. So what I'm going to do is a recap on this week's testimony so that you're familiar. And then we're also going to end by talking about who's next, who's going to testify next. We're also going to talk about who won't be testifying. So you'll get both of those informations. And trust me, no one else is covering that topic in the way that I am. So make sure that you stay tuned for that one. Shoot, let me get back to the article. Okay, here we go. All right, so this week's testimony, it was week 3. It began with Capricorn Clark. She is who so many people wanted to hear from because Capricorn Clark was well known as being very close to Diddy, working for him for a number of years, and also being a huge mover and shaker in the industry. And one of my prior lives, I actually, I read off her bio. It was pretty impressive. Let me see. Let me see if I could pull it back up. Hold on. If it'll come up. We got it. Here we go. I'm going to read this off. I'm going to read off parts of it to you because of the fact that I thought, wow, this really gives a sense of how important her job was for her. So give me, let's see. I'm going to add this. I'm going to just scroll down and we're going to do the core of it. So this is from a website where it was literally for this charity that, stay until the end. Yeah, for this particular charity, they were auctioning off a one-on-one with Capricorn Clark. In other words, if you wanted to make it in marketing or advertising or social media, you could sit down with her because her resume was literally so broad. It was so strong back then that she was a mover and shaker that so many people wanted to meet, and that testimony was important. So here, I'm going to read you parts of it. It says, she's a native of California. She is the quintessential girl. It says before moving to New York, she worked for Def Jam, Magic Johnson Enterprises, and BET Films. And that once she was in New York, she worked for an advertising company, blah, 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 the Plaza Hotel, la, la, la. Mind you, this is while she was still working for Diddy. It says the skills Capricorn had by this point attracted a headhunter who had seen her resume online. The job was for Diddy. For nearly 5 years, she was the personal liaison to Sean Combs, where she handled all the day-to-day functionality of both Mr. Combs' various business endeavors and his active personal life. Over the years, she managed many of the Combs brand events, and she handled the unforgettable men's launch in America, which is, I guess it's a perfume, and the premiere of HBO's Bad Boys of Comedy event. She also worked on the historic Vote or Die campaign with Mr. Combs. And it says she briefly left Bad Boy and permanently left her days as an assistant to take on a position at Sony as a consultant for strategic and product marketing. She was assigned Sierra and R. Kelly, this was mentioned in court, among others, to be project lead. Under Capricorn, both Sierra's album and R. Kelly's albums, they reached #1, beating Eminem and Gwen Stefani. She also created R. Kelly TV, a set of 21 episodes about him. It says then after, basically, she beat all these records, including beating Mr. Combs on the charts. And so then Diddy called her back. It says after a call from Combs one day, when it was time to relaunch Sean John, she came back. She returned to Bad Boy, specifically Sean John, to begin a new journey with him. It also says at Sean John, she successfully launched the Sean John brand into the arena, signing both Cassie and Lauren London. Lauren London became her bestie. Lauren London is Capricorn Clark's bestie. Said it led them into the movement, created campaigns that sparked change in the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. It says currently she lives in Manhattan and has been promoted to global brand director for Sean Diddy Combs for the past 3 years. Y'all, this is important because when you have a title like that, global brand director for Sean Diddy Combs, if you're unable to get a positive referral for him, good luck trying to get another job. And that's going to be relevant. That's going to be, get those likes up, guys. All right. If you're just joining us, don't forget, hit that like and hit that subscribe. So we're doing a recap of this week's testimony. So of course it was Capricorn Clark. She was his personal assistant, as I mentioned. And she also talked about witnessing his attacks on Cassie. Also that about how Diddy wanted to unalive Kid Cudi, that at Pow Pow Point, he banged on Capricorn Clark's door to her apartment at 5:30 in the morning and said, get dressed. We about to go find Kid Cudi and we about to kill that in. This is one of the kidnapping acts that is charged in the indictment. So it started there. And then, so that was the gist of the Capricorn Clark testimony. The difficulty with Capricorn's testimony, she was very emotional on the stand, etc. She talked about working for him for a number of years. And she was also there to help prove forced labor. Forced labor, I've talked about that before, but the gist of forced labor is where there are threats, either physical or verbal threats, that are used to keep someone at your company. It does not have to be slapping somebody around. Part of the argument with Capricorn Clark is that Diddy used forced labor to keep her around. Well, forced labor specifically, hold on, I have it up here. Here we go. There you go. We're going to add this. All right. This is important. I know it's too many words, so don't even worry about all of them. But forced labor. Oh, no, that's a different one. Hold on. This is forced labor with SA. I'm going to remove it off. But forced labor is basically where you can use non-physical threats. And if the threats are threatening serious harm, which under the law is financial ruin, you'll never work in this town again, you'll never have a career, financial ruin, reputational harm, I'm going to tell everybody you're a this, that, and a third, and you're never going to work again, or psychological threats. So that's the significance of her testimony, because what she talked about is various instances where he not only kidnapped her and did various things, but that he had told her, you'll never work again. If you leave me, you're never going to work again in this town, and then did, in fact, blackball her. But I don't just give the prosecution side. In favor of the defense was the fact that Capricorn periodically would beg Diddy to let her come back and work for him all the way up until April 24 of last year. So basically April 24 before the indictment. So naturally, a jury is going to be like, well, hold on. If this was forced labor, if it was all of that going on, then why are you begging him to come back? What I've argued is what the prosecution needs to do a better job of is explaining how blackballing works in the music industry, and that perhaps the reason she kept begging to come back to him was because she couldn't go work elsewhere and tried. She, in fact, testified that she got excited after she left Diddy. She was excited. She had a meeting with Jimmy Iovine, goes thinking it's about a job, only for him to tell her to drop her employment lawsuit that she filed against Diddy for wrongfully terminating her. He says, Jimmy Iovine says, hey, you need to drop that suit. It's not going to end well for you, and it's dangerous. So naturally, that was one of the warnings that she got. Now, importantly, she also testified that Jimmy Iovine said to her, if you don't drop that suit, Diddy's dangerous and something could happen to you. The judge, the other side objected. The judge specifically told the jury that they must disregard her testimony where she said something could happen to you, that component that basically Diddy was dangerous. Here we go. Here we are. All right, so that was the gist of Capricorn. Now we're going to go to Mia, y'all. I need to make sure y'all understand this week's testimony with Mia. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. So Mia was also one of his assistants. Importantly, Cece, which I'm going to call Capricorn Clark Cece. Cece talked about her fear prevented her from calling the police after the kidnapping and after witnessing numerous other assaults. That component is important regarding forced labor, is that you had such a fear that you didn't think that you could use the authorities. Yes. Yep. Okay, sorry. So that's Capricorn. So next up was Mia. Oh, sorry. No. Before Mia was Deonte. Deonte is Cassie's friend. So Deonte was a stylist. He was a witness like no other. When they first started out, they asked him, did you want to testify? He said, absolutely not. I think I have a picture of him here. I have a picture of him. I'll put him up on the screen while we watch. He was actually quite the cutie. Let's share this. That's Deonte. And we're going to, there you go. So that's Deonte. When Deonte testified, he basically testified that he was Cassie's bestie. He said he did not want to be there. He said he got the job by responding, quote, to a Craigslist ad and started working there. Here's the thing. Deonte only would answer the questions asked. That man did not elaborate on nothing. When I say he didn't want to be there, he did not want to be there for the prosecution, and he did not want to be there for the defense either. So what was interesting to me is that, peep this, all the women who got jobs with Diddy, they all say they were found through a headhunter. Deonte said he found his position through Craigslist. Well, the only other testimony about solicitations on Craigslist was when Cassie talked about finding S workers. She actually made posts on Craigslist to find some of those S workers. And so I was thinking about it. I was like, so when Deonte made that testimony and they asked him like, oh, how'd you get the job? He was like, from Craigslist. And he went straight from never being a stylist before to a Craigslist asked to being a stylist. I wanted to know if he did some butt stuff with Puffy or anybody else to get that role. But see, they didn't go into that. They did not ask. I would have been super, hit that like, y'all, hit that subscribe. I would have been super curious about that. Continuously, sorry. He talked about, that he was a stylist from 2008 to 2018. How the hell do you file a stylist on Craigslist? Like, seriously. It's not even like they have a portfolio. They don't even have like a list of their work. Well, he also testified. He said that he heard Combs call Cassie over the years, like a lot of different, like baby girl, Cece for Cassie Combs, y'all, and different other nicknames, but that he also called her out of her name a bunch of times. He also testified Cassie confided in him that she didn't want to do freak offs and that Diddy was demanding these things, and that he would threaten her frequently to not only release S tapes of her, but to release it to her parents and threaten her parents' job as well. That if her parents, it threatened that he would get her parents fired if Cassie were to leave him, etc. What was interesting is on one of the occasions, like this is after some years, that Cassie was complaining to him, no, I can't leave Diddy because he's going to release my S tapes to my parents. Deonte said, let him. Go ahead, let him. Your parents made you. They know what you look like naked. Oh, well, it's just going to be you and him on there. That's when Cassie was like, no, it's actually me and other men. So that's how he found out that the S tapes were Cassie and other men. Keep in mind, part of the RICO is the fact that the way Diddy operates and executes some of his offenses, as well as prevents people from leaving him, is he blackmails them with footage and things like that. All right. So that was that. Now, then we had Mia. Again, she was able to testify under an alias. Let me explain why. Here's why Mia got to be an alias. Because under the law, there's a lot more deference that's given if a witness wants to testify under an alias if they are alleging SA. That's what she alleged here. So that's why. I misspoke previously when I said, I think it was because she also has a civil suit and pursued that as a Jane Doe. That could help. But in this case, she does not. This woman has no pending, from the testimony so far, she doesn't have any pending lawsuits. She's not one of the ones with a current lawsuit against Diddy. So the reason, though, that the judge let her proceed with that alias is because of how, if true, SA is such a damaging thing to experience that her identity should not be outed. So that's why. All right, let's go back to it. Hold on. All right. So that's Mia. Let me go ahead and take it now. So that's Deonte. Now with Mia, she got to start as an alias. Now her testimony, we're going to talk about both sides, how it favored and was helpful to the prosecution and how it was not. Somebody said, I want to be friends with Deonte. Me too. Yeah, and everybody did figure out who she was. It says, Diddy was in a meeting with Clive when TLC pulled up with the goons. Kidnapped them because they played with their money. Album mates. Diddy? I don't think Diddy did that, though. I think that may have been somebody else, but I don't think Diddy did that. I want to hear more, though, on that. Drop it in the chat below. Hold on. Sorry, I'm going back to my little summary. What the hell? Do I have a virus? This is insane. Hold on, let me get back. I literally just had that article up. Y'all, this is crazy. Hold on a second. All right. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. I lost my place where I was, and I had all my little notes up. We're going to do it because apparently I got some type of virus, so screw with me. Here we go. There we go. All right, back to it. We were with Mia, okay? So real quickly, and we're almost done with this part of the recap. This is not it. Hold on. Hold on. I literally just had it. My notes and my handwriting are so horrible to read. Here we go. I will just keep going. Literally, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm sorry. It looks like, oh my gosh, this virus keeps knocking us out. All right, well, let's just go. Okay, so again with Mia's testimony, the significance of Mia is that she was there to prove forced labor. Now, here's the wild part. I don't know if the prosecution made a good call by having her discuss the essay. I'm going to give you the facts of the essay, and then we're going to talk about it together. So with Mia was a bombshell. Mia was a bombshell because not only did she talk about being Diddy's employee, she talked about witnessing different levels of violence. She talked about witnessing him beat on Cassie, including she was the one who Deonte had testified that there was one time when Diddy was attacking Cassie and that Deonte jumped on Diddy to stop him. And so then Mia, jumped on Diddy to help Deonte with all of that. But ultimately, the bombshell from her testimony is that on day one, she was petrified. You hear me? She never looked up. She looked at her fingers the whole time, like her hand, and she never made eye contact. She was terrified. And she basically told the story of she claimed that Diddy SA'd her on multiple occasions. And too many for her to remember. Let me say this. When she says too many to remember, it's not that she didn't remember. It's that she blocked them out because they were traumatic memories. But she went into all of that. Her testimony was very moving. If you've ever met someone who very recently went to the police or went to a teacher or somebody and talked about and revealed that they were assaulted, she had that absolute demeanor. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me. I was like, wait a minute. This stuff started, it happened to you, or it started happening like 10 or more years ago. Like, why are you acting like this was just yesterday or like you just revealed it for the first time? Because obviously it's a very emotional thing, but this was just very fresh. Come to find out, in her testimony, she testified that she had never told anyone about it. Not a boyfriend, not her parents, no one about it. Not even her lawyer, until after the feds came to her and interviewed her. And when the feds came to her, she did what all the people did, which is she then hires a lawyer, right? When she hires a lawyer, they have their initial meeting with the feds. She didn't even mention the essay then. It wasn't until she goes back, meets with her lawyer, and the lawyer's like, tell me everything. And that's when she tells what happened with the essays. Now, let's move over, though, to the cross-examination. On cross, I have to say, on Friday, where Brian Steele began the cross, the jury was not feeling it. In other words, the jury was very much more so on the side of Brian Steele. And as in their facial expressions and so forth were having difficulty. They were not believing her. Here's why. Number one, they showed a variety of social media posts. Particularly, they focus on social media posts from Diddy's birthday, where every year she'd make this big post about how it's wonderful working for him and he's the most amazing person and she loves him and da. Well, she also stated the prior day that the first SA occurred on Diddy's 45th birthday. That he took her into the kitchen of wherever they were, had everyone else clear out, gave her 2 shots. She took them. She gets woozy. And then he has her against the wall and he gropes her, puts his hand up her skirt, and then he kisses her unwanted. She wakes up the next morning clothed, but in a chair in his penthouse. So Brian Steele is like, why are you making these posts to celebrate the anniversary of your SA? If you were really SA'd, would you really be celebrating it? And she did good in answering each question. She was like, I wasn't celebrating that. This is my boss. My boss follows me. So do many of his fans. And so it would be expected of me to post something up for his birthday. She also, one of the photos was her like in a tutu with her butt tooted up. And then he's dressed and he's got his hand like this, holding his crotch. And they're like, really? If he SA'd you, this is the picture of all the pictures you're going to pick. You're going to post this photo of him holding his crotch and you with your butt tooted up. And the jurors were like, yeah, I don't understand that. So, and then he also asked her lines of questionings that were like, you said you were having, you loved working with him in this post. So he was like, how could you ever have a good day working for this man? And she was like, easy. You have to put the trauma to the side. You have to block it out so that you can survive. She said also, she grew up in a very loving environment and family, and that so when Diddy would be like terrible to her, but then he would switch and then be nice, she would like forgive him, accept it, and move on, because she was like, I want to believe, the best in him, and I'm accustomed to people generally being nice and kind to me. So when he would be when his personality would change, she was like, it would be easy to choose to put the traumatic, the horrible instances to the back of your mind. Now, I can say anybody who's ever been assaulted by someone, that, especially if it was like in your family and you got to come around them, that's exactly what you do. You push it to the back of your mind and you keep moving because you have no choice. But in the end, all that matters is not what we think, it's what the jury thinks. And the jury wasn't buying it. Now, the defense ended with this, and I thought this was a good place to conclude. They ended with, because again, part of what she's supposed to prove is forced labor. And what forced labor is here's the definition. Forced labor is obtaining labor or services through threats or force of threats. And it can either be physical threats, or it could be other types of threats, and threats of serious harm or abuse or threatened abuse of the law or legal process. Okay, that's what forced labor is. And it means that in this case, serious harm could be, quote, it says threats to destroy her career and reputation, or using psychological abuse. So here, part of as well what they brought in with the forced labor is that when she finally did get laid off, she got laid off in 2017. She was devastated. She sent Diddy a text that said, I'm going to unalive myself. I'm so upset. And Diddy immediately responded and said, what? Don't do that. Absolutely not. And he called her and she didn't answer, and did it like he responded like a true friend would. Rightly so. The defense says, well, wait a minute. If this was such a bad place to work, if he was such a monster, shouldn't you be happy that you don't have to work there anymore? She said, it wasn't like that. This was my whole life. I had worked so hard. I couldn't envision or think of any other place to work, blah, blah, blah. I felt like my career would be over, is what she testified. But I think, yeah, it is trauma. I think overall, the average juror, right? These people are mostly 30 to 70 years old. The average juror, who is just like a hardworking All-American, will have difficulty processing. Yep, it says Diddy hires people just to use and abuse them. They would have difficulty processing, how is it forced labor if this woman is begging for her job back? Same thing with Capricorn Clark. So that was a really strong place. But keep in mind, it doesn't change the fact that he was previously threatening her to ruin her financially. Like that if I fire you, you're never going to work in this town again. So later on, the fact that she, in effect, wants to continue the bad job or the treacherous job, it doesn't change the fact that he did those other things that could be seen as forced labor that support that and prove that up. But the problem is going to be, overall, what does the jury find to be most reasonable? All right, so that was her. So now let's talk about what's next and who's next. I see these questions all up in the chat. So we're going to talk about who is and who's not going to be testifying. Drop in the chat who it is that you want to know if they're going to testify or not. Oh, and I want to make sure I answer this. Some people are saying they think Mia's lying. What are your thoughts? I don't think Mia's lying. I think that she is just truly traumatized. Also, like, if you look at someone like Mia, and I hate to say it like this. Hold on one second. I got to grab something. I hate to say it like this, y'all. But like, if you knew of a Mia, especially back then in the 09s, I could see why a man, a powerful, powerful man, would pick someone like her to SA, because no one would believe her. She's like a party girl, super blonde, flighty. No one would like believe her. And that's why she didn't say a word about it. So I do believe Mia. I also think it was very wise. Remember last week or the week before, they had the expert, Dr. Dawn Hughes took the stand, who talked generally about abuse victims and how they process it, how abuse impacts them and affects them. Now, initially when she took the stand, I had some concerns because I was like, wait a minute, she never even examined Cassie. She never sat down with Cassie, none of that. Well, let me bite my words. I'm now understanding her purpose was so that when people like Mia took the stand and did weird ish, like never looking up, right? Mia never made eye contact. Dr. Dawn already laid the foundation for the jury and explained to the jury, hey, they often don't make eye contact when they're describing what's happened to them. It's not lying. It's because of avoidance, that they also often block situations out. This explains why she only was able to she told the court about 3 or 4 incidents of SA or stuff like that. And then she said there were many more, too many to count, she said, but that she said, I can't remember them. Remember, in this instance, she said, I can't remember. I felt she should have been prepped to say, I blacked out. So in the end, I do believe Mia, but I also think it's going to be a real stretch for an average Joe juror to process her testimony and see it as forced labor without more. They're going to need the prosecution to have either another expert come on or some elaboration or something, because I think the responses of the jurors were looking at each other. They were smirking. They were like, especially when those different posts were listed where she was talking about how much she loved Diddy, what a great boss she was. And when she was complaining, talking about, I'm going to unalive myself because she got laid off. I think a jury's just going to be like, which one is it? Were you forced into this labor or did you love your job? All right. It says something about the government. The government is not swinging hard on the case. It really feels like they sent their third string players to go up against some real dragons. These wimpy folks have been on the stand are pitiful. Well, they're definitely stacking it brick by brick. I'm starting to see it more, especially as you see the same witnesses testifying to similar types of terrible things that Diddy is doing. You're beginning to see Diddy's power, and that it's not as simple as one particular worker being like, I'm just not going to work here anymore. That he was more powerful and stronger than that. I do, however, believe they're not objecting enough. That they sit there and the defense, they don't miss an objection. If anything, they overly object. And the prosecution needs to get on those objections because the defense objections have precluded some really important stuff from being considered by the jury, such as when Capricorn Clark testified. She even testified when she first found out about Kid Cudi. She told Cassie, what are you doing? You're going to get us all killed, which shows Diddy's power. Not only did they object, the judge said, you must disregard it and you can't consider it. Same thing when Capricorn testified that Jimmy Iovine told her, drop your lawsuit or something bad could happen to you. They objected, and they've been even objecting before people have been responding to prevent certain things from even coming out of people's mouths. All right. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, Christy. It says most of his victims have Stockholm syndrome. I agree. I would definitely agree with that. So here's the tea. So many people have been asking, I got this question about the kids. Okay, have the kids been coming, etc. So I'm going to tell you about who's not going to be testifying and who is or needs to in order for the prosecution to win. So for the not, and let me see your comments in the chat. Not is Little Rod. Many have asked, is Little Rod going to testify? The answer is no. He won't be testifying. The first week of trial, many saw him going into the courtroom with his attorney. Now remember, Little Rod is the first male that ever filed a civil suit against Diddy. He's not going to be testifying. The prosecution don't need him. I told y'all, I said I believe that there was credibility issues with him. And it does not help the fact that there's a pending civil suit. Actually, that helps more for the defense, because what the defense is going to argue is, oh, Your Honor, oh, members of the jury, you can't believe anything this man is saying because he's suing Diddy for $10 million. Yes, and I said half of his case was dismissed. That's right. Half of Little Rod's case was dismissed. But in the end, Little Rod as a witness would just look messy. So there's no Little Rod. The other one, Gene Deal. Gene Deal's been in that courtroom. Gene Deal's been in that courthouse. Gene Deal's not going to be testifying. Let me know if you were surprised about that in the chat. There is no Gene Deal ain't testifying. He's not going to be testifying. Now, hold on. Menu Mindset said, those bodyguards need to testify. Hold on, let me grab my water. You are right, and I'm going to speak to that right now. Hold on one second. Let me grab it. You sorry. Lord have mercy. New York is loud. Forgive me. Oh, here we go. Okay. Sorry. All right. This is who is. Sorry. Who's not. Sorry, guys. I know it's ghetto. I know. I'm so ghetto. But this is the tea. This is my favorite part that I wanted to tell you guys. Hold on. No Little Rod. Are y'all surprised by Little Rod? But no Gene Deal. Are y'all surprised by Gene Deal? Yes, there's no Gene Deal because Gene Deal is not relevant. The relevant time frame was really 09 to the present. There are some instances that they talk about with 04, but it's truly 09 to the present. Gene Deal. Oh, yeah, you guys in the jury are right. Gene Deal was too soon. However, I believe I am going to be there tomorrow. Yes. And I believe I think Gene Deal wants people to think that he's going to testify because it creates some allure, but he's not going to testify. Let me explain this as well. Who else is not going to testify? None of the sons. Justin won't be testifying. Christian won't testify. What's his name? Justin, Christian, Quincy. None of them are going to testify. His mama will not testify. His mom. Yes. None of the girls, of course, the daughters aren't going to be testifying either. They're not going to do it. Here's how we know. Here's how I know. I'm sure of it. 100%. It's because under the law, if you are a witness, you're not allowed to sit and listen to any other witness's testimony. They've been in there. Gene Deal, Little Rod, the sons, the daughters have been in there. They heard opening statements. They heard testimony. Now, there has been one exception to that, and that was Cassie's husband, Alex Fine. He sat in the courtroom just some of the time. And there were actually articles that were done like, oh, they're not letting him sit in the courtroom. It's because he is on the defense witness list. Now, the defense is now thinking they're not going to call him, but it doesn't matter. And the only reason they let him sit on just some of the testimony was because if he was called to testify, the only thing he was going to testify to was text messages pertaining to the R word that was alleged to have happened. Specifically, Alex Fine sent Diddy a text message after it happened and said he was going to whoop his tail, beat his A, da-da-da. And that's what the defense may want to talk about. So the agreement between the prosecution and the defense was they would make an exception for Alex. They would let him listen in on everything up to discussions about the R word. He had to leave the courtroom for that. And the reason they were willing to do that is only because Cassie was 9 months pregnant and he was, quote, her moral support. So I hope that explains. Yes, that explains why Alex was there. So it was only because there was a special agreement between the prosecution and the defense due to the fact that Cassie was 9 months pregnant and that the defense wasn't even sure they're going to call Alex. But if they were, it was only going to be for that one issue. So that is why they made him get up and get on out that courtroom when they began to have testimony pertaining to the R word from Cassie. And again, and he only sat in for Cassie's part of the testimony. He didn't sit in opening statements or any of that. He only sat in for Cassie's part. So I hope that helps. Thank you guys so much for the super chats. All right, we've got another one here. Hold on. It's up. Okay. JR says, I don't buy Mia's testimony. She's been lied on more times than I can. Been lied on more times than I can count by women. Oh, you have. Sorry about that. He says Stockholm syndrome is not, it's not a get out of jail free card. For Cass, sure. Everybody else, no. Okay, he's saying Stockholm syndrome maybe for Cassie, but not for everybody else. No bodyguard. What if Roger Bonds talks? So yeah, I'm not done going through. Thank you so much for that super chat. And I love it when y'all do it with like a really deep question like this one. That's totally fair. Let me add this too about Mia. What was interesting is with Mia, after day 1 of testimony, the beginning of day 2, and this is why I love being in the courtroom, y'all. The beginning of day 2, the defense stated that they wanted to admit into evidence a video that they found. Someone shared with defense counsel, like some regular person, once they figured out who Mia was after testifying day 1, sent to the defense a video that showed her talking in the way that she talked basically on day 1 when she was petrified, when I described that she was petrified, terrified, had difficulty, was speaking very slow. And basically it was a video that would be used to imply that she was faking it, that she wasn't that traumatized, that she knows how to be an actress and pretend to be, that upset. Well, it went back and forth. The prosecution was like, no, this is redundant. It's not needed. Da, da, da. And the judge said no. And the judge did not allow in that video of her. But I would love, if anyone knows or has seen that video, drop a link to it in the comments below, because I sure want to know. Yeah. So someone else is saying, so stick with an employer who graped you because you don't want to be blackballed. Here's the thing. And I hear what you're saying. JL is saying, I have difficulty believing that. And I think the jury will too. I think at least one of the 12 will too. And here's the thing. All 12 must find him guilty on each count beyond a reasonable doubt. If one person says, no, I'm not buying it, I'm voting not guilty, then for that particular count, it's either it'll be a hung jury, which is a mistrial, meaning they'll just have to try it all over again. And it is possible that they're able to agree on some counts and cannot agree on others. What happens then is the counts they can agree on. So let's say they're able to agree, yes, he did prostitution. Then he can be sentenced for prostitution. And then the other 2 items that they can't agree on, the government can decide if they're going to retry him just on those 2, or if they're going to dismiss it and just let him be sentenced on the 1. Yeah, agreed. Someone else said the jury's going to have trouble with those things, even though I believe Mia. And here's the other thing, though. I don't know if I agree with the strategy of the prosecution to even admit into evidence the R word. Here's why. I feel like it confuses the issue. I feel like it could make jurors so focused on trying to decide, did he or did he not R-word her? When in the end, he's not being charged with R-wording. For Mia, the charge is forced labor. Now, an element of forced labor is physical threats, or you can have non-physical threats. So the relevancy of the essay is that it's supposed to speak to, here we go, the physical threats. The physical threats that she experienced, but I'm not seeing it. So specifically, I put this on the screen, a summary. This is a summary of how SA and threats can help prove forced labor under these facts in this case. Let me pull this down. And here's the gist of it. It's kind of dumb, actually. It says repeated SA are deemed as acts of force and coercive. So if the employer physically assaulted an employee, it directly supports the by use of means of force or threats. Got it. Okay. But here's the thing. If they don't believe that that happened, I believe it's going to cause them to lose all credibility and what she says. So I think it might have been better. I personally think it may have been better, especially given she told no one, blah, 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 to just leave out the essay. Leave it out. You could have talked about all the other things. She had spaghetti thrown at her head. Turkey was thrown at her. He did all kinds of things to her. And I think that they could have gotten there even without that. Y'all let me know your thoughts. But I think most people are so focused on, did that happen or not? As though if it happened, that makes Diddy guilty of R word, and therefore that's one of the offenses. It's not even one of the listed 8. Remember, I talk about the 2 of 8. He only needs to be found guilty of 2 of the 8. It ain't even one of the 8. It says none of them were R worded. The feds coached them on what to say in your opinion. Okay. Oh yeah, the tampon thing. Yeah. Oh, all of that. The tampon thing, that'll support forced labor for sure. She should have focused on physical She should have focused on physical violence and forced labor. Well, I think the physical that Mia talked about was like him throwing a bowl of spaghetti at her when, she tried to go to the bathroom to change her tampon and he got upset about it. And it was throwing things at her, but it was never like putting his hands around her neck or things like that. So I actually think the stronger way, the easier way under these facts to prove forced labor is through the non-physical threats. Remember, under the law, you can show that someone threatened, that they threatened your financial well-being, like you're never going to work again, that they threatened reputational harm, as in like, I'm going to lie and I'm going to tell everybody you did X, Y, or Z. There was a section where Diddy was upset with her when she was trying to leave the yacht in St. Bart's. And he found out she was trying to get the crew to take her to land. And he told her, you better turn yourself into Jesus and walk on water, bitch. And she then tried to get off the boat. Once she did, he got on the phone with HR and told HR that a bunch of lies about her. That too is part of forced labor. If you threaten to unlawfully use the legal process against someone to keep them employed by you or to keep them working for you, that's unlawful. Here's what I wish they would have gone into. Y'all peep this. So the portion of forced labor where it can be proven if you, quote, unlawfully use the legal process or threats of the legal process to keep someone working for you, right? That could have been proven up by multiple people testified that they didn't call the cops. Y'all hit that like, hit that subscribe. They didn't call the cops because they were under an NDA. Capricorn Clark, she said, I had an NDA. Now here's the thing. They should have focused on that more. They should have said, well, did you realize that an NDA doesn't prevent you from reporting crimes? No, I was told by HR I couldn't report anything, or I would be sued for hundreds of thousands for violating the NDA. Because also Mia spoke about that too. She said, well, I didn't think that I could. I signed an NDA. Multiple witnesses testified to that. When the truth is, under the law, if Diddy or any of Diddy's staff, HR or whatever, had told them, you can't report this because you'll be in violation of your NDA and I'll sue the pants off you and make you broke. If he did that, that's absolutely forced labor due to the fact that that's a lie. We all know now, people have been watching my channel and stuff like that, that even with an NDA, you can report any crime. But if your boss lies to you and tells you you can't report a crime or you can't whistleblow or you're going to get sued, that's a lie. And that isn't evidence of forced labor. It actually satisfies it. This case is not allowed. They're not allowed to talk about all the people that actually did disappear and talk. You're right. They can't talk about that. They can't talk about any of the alleged unalivings. None of that. But hold on. So for the finale, I want to make sure I didn't. Wait. Oh, we got another super chat. Why did the judge allow it in or Mia to be questioned about it? Oh, about the R word. So it went back and forth. That was a big deal. They allowed it in because it is an element of forced labor. It could be, by element, I mean, it's one of the many ways to prove it. So it was relevant to the coercion and the physical threats that can be proven under forced labor. That's why it got in. Simone, do I know whatever happened to Gina's interview that the prosecution said they were going to submit to the court since the defense said Gina's not coming? I'm not sure about that. So what happens is all witness interviews that the prosecution does, they have to write up their notes and provide the notes to the defendants. So my understanding is that they did that. They provided the notes, but by interview, they're not talking about the Tasha K interview. They can't get the Tasha K interview in. They can't get any of it. I personally believe that Gina was tampered with, that was an element of tampering with a witness, that Diddy made her go away, gave her money, paid her, etc. I actually have a whole video that I did on that. Check it out this week. I have a Diddy playlist. Click the Diddy playlist. You'll see all of that. But so the answer is, I don't know what the court decided regarding any interview or any video or whatever of Gina. But it's my understanding under the law, they cannot simply play that without Gina being there. Even if she's not there, they can't simply like play a video or prior testimony because it violates Diddy's right under the confrontation clause. The confrontation clause says you have a right to confront any witness that's testifying against you. So if they were to play that video, there would be no way for Diddy's legal team to cross-examine the video. That's why it won't be allowed in. Thanks so much, Gold Digger. It says, not so much Stockholm Syndrome fear. People don't understand blacklisting in entertainment. It supersedes HR complaints. That's right. If you step out of line, your whole life is swept from underneath you. Yeah, the entertainment industry is different. And they really need to have, I think they're supposed to have James Cruz, former CEO of Bad Boy. I think they're going to have him on the stand. If so, they need to have him talk about how bad blackballing is in the music industry and that it's not like any other industry. It's not like nursing. You can't just go to a different hospital. There's only like 4 music labels. And if you don't have permission from Diddy to go work somewhere else, no one else is going to take you. Or if they call Diddy and they're like, what do you think about her? And he's like, oh, she's terrible. You're not working again. It's just, it's not so simple. That's also why it's a component of forced labor. So let's get into who we got to hear from. All right. So we're going to close with that. Yeah, we got this one. Who we are expecting to hear from. Number 1, we got to hear from KK. That's Christina Karam. Christina Karam was Diddy's right-hand woman. I want to say was for 8 years, all the way up until all of this shenanigans came through, including she was even sued. She was named in 3 of the civil lawsuits. So many people talked about she was basically his fixer, that whenever they would have complaints that see him beating on somebody, they would tell her thinking she'd help, and she would do nothing. Okay. All she did was cover her butt. And she was one of the last women standing. She was there until the end, basically until the criminal charges started coming about. And she's not Black. She's I think she's Middle Eastern woman, very attractive, very professional, blah, blah, blah. And she's going to testify. I believe she's going to be one of the last people to testify for the prosecution. And she's going to testify for the prosecution under some type of deal. I believe that she was probably indicted as a co-conspirator, but what they can do is they have what's called sealed indictments. With a sealed indictment, you don't know who else is listed as a co-conspirator until it becomes unsealed. In other words, it's private. And what they likely told her is, KK, get your butt up on that stand. You better testify honestly. And if you don't, we're going to unseal that indictment and you're going to be sitting in jail right next to Diddy. Because keep in mind, under RICO, she can be charged just as he is, and she can face the same sentence as him. Under RICO, the least person in the organization can be sentenced just as severely as the head honcho, as the mastermind. So if Diddy is facing life for S trafficking, she would be too if she was part of that. If Diddy is facing life for RICO, she would be too. If Diddy is facing 10 years for the prostitution, which he is, she would be facing that too if they find that she participated in that too, which was setting up, the FOs, the hotel rooms, any of that. And I firmly believe that there is evidence of that because that was actually one of the easiest things that they're seeking to prove. Let me get that off. Hold on. All right. So KK is definitely going to take the stand. Again, I believe she's going to do it as a co-conspirator, and therefore she'll probably do it under, it could be under immunity, but possibly not. It just depends. They may not give her, if they give her immunity, she has to testify. I believe that she would want to testify because she also wants to clear her name. She's going to want to make herself look like a victim of the machine as well, as opposed to a co-mastermind. So we got to have KK up here. And then secondly, we have to have at least one of the security officers. We need Roger Bonds. I think Roger Bonds probably would be better than D-Rock. And I want to hear what you guys think in the chat. I don't think they'll get D-Rock up on that stand. I don't think they're going to get D-Rock. So D-Rock is the other security guard. D-Rock was with him all the way until the end. D-Rock actually was, Mia gave testimony that he was basically offered to give her money if she was willing to make a statement that would have been helpful towards Diddy. And she didn't take the money. D-Rock is his fixer. Now, here's why I don't know that D-Rock will show up. I wouldn't be surprised if D-Rock, who was his former security, ends up coming up missing and just doesn't show up, because D-Rock is not afraid of prison. D-Rock allegedly went to jail, took a charge for Biggie. And that's how come him and Biggie were so close. D-Rock took a charge for Biggie because Biggie was supposed to be like he was about to hit it big, get signed and so forth. So D-Rock took the charge, did the time for him. When he came out, Biggie took care of him. I believe that D-Rock may not testify, may think, okay, I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to testify. I'm, going to leave the country, whatever, thinking that Diddy will take care of him if he does that. Diddy ain't going to do that. Diddy is going to treat him just like he treated Shine and let him fall. But D-Rock knows where a lot of those bodies are built. Now, the one mitigating thing that might cause D-Rock to actually show is he's now married. He has children. He has, I don't know if they're grandchildren as well, but he's got kids. He's married. He lives in the Poconos, this quiet little life, allegedly with his wife. And his wife might be like, hell no, you're not about to take a charge for that man. It could be that, or the wife could be like, well, if he gives us $10 million, go ahead, sit somewhere. The challenge is you don't know how much time you're going to get. This is Rico. If Diddy's facing life, you could be facing life for fooling around with him and not cooperating. Someone's asking what's the race of the jury. Okay. It says, is Brendan the alleged drug mule testifying? Has he been mentioned? He hasn't been mentioned. I have not seen him at the court. He could be testifying. I don't know yet. But that would make perfect sense. He would be great to testify about narcotics distribution because apparently he was the one who was getting him for the freak offs. I also believe it's very likely that he will testify because he got a hell of a deal. His charges were dismissed and they are expungible. He was charged under state law, Florida state law, as a first-time offender. But here's the thing. When Brendan the drug mule was found with narcotics on him on Diddy's jet when they were headed to, I don't remember where they were going. They were going to some island. Well, he was caught at an airport. When you're caught with substances at an airport, that's a federal offense. In other words, he could have been charged federally for that. So I believe he's likely another one who is indicted as a indicted co-conspirator, like a secret co-conspirator with a sealed indictment. And they likely told him, if you come and you testify honestly and in support of Diddy, then we're not going to pursue these federal charges because, yeah, Miami let you off the hook, but we have the ability to charge you pursuant to RICO as a drug distributor, and therefore you're facing a bunch of time. That man, if so, that man's going to be singing like a canary because he can't do no time. Look at him. That poor little white boy, bless his little heart. He look like he folds clothes at Abercrombie and Finch. He can't do it. Also, thank you, V. Lenore, for the super chat. You also asked what about Jonathan Odie? Hell no. They have talked about Odie. They confirmed that Jonathan Odie was, in fact, an S worker, that he captured footage of one of the FOs. He basically blackmailed Diddy with it. Diddy paid him, I think it was $5 million for that footage and made it go away. And as well, he signed an NDA, but he won't be testifying. That man is he's unwell. And with his mental health issues, as well as the fact that he basically blackmailed Diddy with that tape, he would make a terrible witness and the defense would tear him up. They'd be able to be like, didn't you blackmail Diddy with this tape of, him being intimate with his girlfriend, blah, 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 and you wanted $5 million? Aren't you just here for the money? Yeah, they'll tear him up. All right. And last, it says, what's the race of the jury? Oh my gosh. So there's 18 of them. There's like 4 black ladies, 3 or 4 black guys. It is 8 men and 4 women. But here's the thing. We don't know which of them are alternates and which are not. But it is extremely, extremely diverse. I don't know, probably more than half the jury is minority between blacks, Hispanics, and Asian. And a small minority, though, is white. However, they said only 7 of the jurors are from the Bronx and Manhattan, that the rest are from Westchester. Westchester is affluent. It's an affluent, like, suburb, I guess, of Manhattan. But so those Westchester people, we'll have to see. But yeah, that's a whole. So that's the race of the jury. But finally, as far as testimony goes, there has to be KK. I don't see how they can bring this case all together without having KK take the stand. And there has to be some security guards for Diddy. Now, Roger Bonds, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be at least one of them due to the fact that Roger is telling everything he knows on Vlad TV and YouTube and stuff like that. So he's clearly not afraid to tell his version of the story. So I anticipate that Roger Bonds is going to get up there and he's going to bring it together, because what the significance of the security is it shows how the entity operates, which is that they had to do Diddy's dirty work, and that when he was whooping on people or someone tried to intervene, the security was then required to intervene on behalf of Diddy. So you couldn't save Cassie if Diddy was there. Or Roger Bonds does talk about there were certain instances where it got too much and that he did intervene. But by and large, we need the security to really bring together a number of these offenses, including the substance distribution, the forced labor, the other things like that. Hit that subscribe, guys. It says $800 is for their private dancing. Then he's telling them to do this and do that to each other. They're singers and dancers. Suddenly they're personal porn stars. I don't know. I don't know about that one, Afra. It says, if Trump pardons Diddy, would that apply to other co-conspirators? No. He would need to pardon each person separately. Someone said D-Rock needs to take the stand. I don't know if he's going to show up. Oh, and lastly, the other thing that we're going to see, guys, and I can't wait for this. They're calling a records custodian to the stand. Do you know why? That records custodian is likely going to be the custodian of prison calls. There are a number of prison calls of Diddy basically trying to bribe witnesses. Bribe witnesses. I hope some of those are Gina, y'all. I hope some of those are Gina. Because remember, an additional charge that he has is bribery and tampering with witnesses. Those two alone, if he's found guilty of both of them, he is found guilty of RICO. They just have to show that those two things happen within 10 years of each other. He's screwed. So I cannot wait to hear from the records custodian of the prison, who's going to play for us audio footage of Diddy tampering with witnesses and trying to get witnesses to not testify or to testify and say whatever it is that he wants, y'all. Thank you for that super chat. Yeah, I would not be surprised if some of those were on Gina. And the thing is, he's so used to being able to tamper and get this done, right? He wasn't even thinking. Everyone knows all of the jail calls are recorded. But so one of the things that he would do, though, is like he would call D-Rock, and then he would have D-Rock call somebody on three-way, the person that he wanted to tamper with, so that his call log would only show a call to D-Rock. But he's not thinking. They record it, so they're going to hear that you had D-Rock add somebody else to the call. And you can't do that, y'all. That's why he could not get no bail. That's why he couldn't get bail. Yeah, foolish criminal. I think it's going to be great. Thank you so much. Oh, we got another one. What do we have here? I want to make sure I don't miss your question. Oh, it says Roger Bonds is the glue here. And he already said that he would testify. That his Vlad interview was last year. It was really good. It was entirely credible and dooming. Him and KK are the final 1-2. The final prediction, Diddy gets 13 to 15. Here's the thing. The jury is the prosecution is going to call Roger Bonds and KK at the very end. They will be mic drop moments. I wouldn't be surprised if they wait till the end as well to call the records custodian, and it be records custodian, Roger Bonds, KK, or records custodian, KK, Roger Bonds, something like that. I don't know about D-Rock, as I mentioned. He's not trustworthy, but thank you, JP, for that super chat. You're 100% right. They cannot win this case without some of his security coming on, testifying, and corroborating. The reason why as well is because you need the security, because the security is not alleging that they themselves were S-trafficked. The security is not alleging that, they were part of a FO, or even if they were. The thing is, the security is more neutral. So if the security comes in and said, yes, this happened, and this happened, you don't have the credibility issues that you might see with Mia or Capricorn, who then, begged to work for Diddy. It says MTV Paramount should be called. A lot of his physical and verbal assaults were on their film. That Dark and Lonely was on the show. there are clips online. I think that Lorianne Gibson is also supposed to take the stand, and I think that she's going to authenticate some of those clips, and they're going to include that. Now, mind you, it's a long time ago, though, so I believe a lot of the footage probably was destroyed, especially anything that didn't make him look good. They probably don't have the outtakes, and it's the outtakes that would show him acting a whole fool. But thank you for that super chat. Make sure I didn't miss any. We got it. All right, we got this one too. Paramount. Yep, we got that about Paramount. Yeah. Nope, we absolutely do not. Here we go. Yeah. So we've got Lorianne Gibson. I'm looking forward to her as well. Lorianne Gibson, we're looking forward to the custodian of records, looking forward to KK, and likely Roger Bonds. I've seen him nowhere around the courtroom. He is laying low. So is KK. And many people even think that D-Rock is dead. Apparently people haven't heard from D-Rock in a while. So we'll have to see how that goes as well. Let me know your comments in the chat below. I will be live tomorrow from the courthouse. I want to hear your questions. It's going to be Mia on the stand. Oh, someone asked this very important question. They said, tomorrow is going to be redirect by the prosecution. And they asked, what would I recommend or what would I want to see on redirect to help rehabilitate Mia? I think what I would do, number one, is I would try to give her the opportunity to explain how blackballing works in the music industry and why she was so terrified to lose that job, despite all of the other issues that she had with that job. She needs to be able to explain, it's because I didn't think I could work again. It's because I didn't think that, there was nothing else like it, blah, 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 whatever it is. She's going to need to hone in on that. In addition, she's going to need to, she's done a fairly good job of explaining why she didn't tell anyone, but also how she blocked it out. They're going to need to do a better job of clarifying, did she forget or did she block out because it was such a traumatic thing, these alleged essays? And then as well, they're going to need to clarify that how is it that this could be forced labor if old girl is threatening to unalive herself and begging for her job back? They asked her on cross, you weren't first to work there, were you? She said, that's not how I saw it. I saw that I was. But she has not elaborated and explained. Defense, they're not supposed to let her elaborate. On cross, yes or no questions. But the prosecution on redirect needs to have her come up with a good explanation for why it is that you're considering this, forced labor. She doesn't know what forced labor is. So it's not that she's considering it forced labor, but why is it that this is supposed to be so bad it's a crime if you're over here begging to come back to work? Explain that part. Because also under the law that forced labor, it occurs whenever the threats of, I'm going to ruin your career, you'll never work again, I'm, going to file a lawsuit against you, whatever. Whenever that's done, that's when the forced labor takes place. Even if later down the line, she still wants to work for or with that person, part of the psychological threats are that no matter how bad it is, you still want to work here. So that's what the prosecution has to capture, is that the reason she still wanted to work there is because that was the psychological threats created by the forced labor. It makes you feel that no matter how bad it is, you can't go nowhere. You can't do nothing else. You'll never make no money again. You'll never be as big as you are with me, that you'll never make it without me. You'll never make it without this company, and you'll never make it unless you're here. So pulling it together by showing that that is an element, not only is it the forced labor, but that's what forced labor does to a mistreated employee, is it makes them think no matter how bad it is, this is your only option and you better stick it out. All right. It says, I saw what is Jay saying? Hold on. I saw in a court doc that some of the forced labor that they're alleging is Cassie. That is true. Cassie and victim 2. Hold on. That is true. Victim 2 is Mia. Victim 2 is Mia. So Cassie also supports forced labor in that, remember, there was the threats of, I'm going to release your S tape. So there was a number of threats, and he was, I'm not going to release your album. Those are all forced labor threats financial harm, reputational ruin, all that goes to forced labor. The problem is going to be with it related to Cassie is the defense is going to say, oh, he just did that because she was his girlfriend and they were having a lover spat, that they had a toxic relationship. The problem is, though, he did it to her in her capacity as a signed label artist. So it's no longer domestic violence or DV. It's no longer DV when you're telling someone you're going to mess with their contract. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Drop your questions down below. I'll see you live on the steps of the courthouse tomorrow. I'm going to go live at least twice, maybe 3 times tomorrow, just to give you guys updates throughout the day. Y'all take care. It's your legal bestie. Hit that subscribe. Hit that subscribe on your way out. Take care.